Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the computer screen show 3 small dots moving toward his fleet. The dots were human ships, and they looked tiny compared to his 200 giant vessels. He started laughing, and soon his whole crew was laughing too. "Look at these stupid humans," said one of his officers, pointing at the screen. "They think 3 little ships can fight our entire armada." Another officer wiped tears from his eyes. "Maybe they don't know how to count. Do they think 3 equals 200? Kethavar had been conquering planets for 30 years. He had destroyed fleets 10 times larger than what the humans had sent. These 3 ships were smaller than his supply vessels. His smallest warship could probably crush all 3 at once. "Sir, should we even bother with our big guns?" asked his weapons officer. "We could just ram them with our cargo ships." The whole bridge erupted in laughter again. Kethavar loved moments like this. Easy victories always put his crew in a good mood. He had read reports about humans before. They were a young species, barely a few hundred years into space travel. Their technology was primitive, their ships were weak, and they had never won a major space battle against any advanced alien race. "They must be desperate," Kethavar said, stroking his scaled chin. "The farming colony below probably begged them for help, so they sent whatever junk ships they had lying around. The farming planet was perfect for the Zephyrian Empire. Rich. Soil, perfect climate, and weak defenses. After today, it would become another food production world for his people. The humans living there would either serve his empire or be relocated somewhere else." On his tactical display, Kethavar could see every detail of the human ships. They looked ancient compared to Zephyrian technology. No heavy armor plating, no massive weapon arrays, no shield generators visible on their hulls. One of his destroyers carried more firepower than all 3 ships combined. Meanwhile, far across space, Captain Kim stood quietly on the bridge of the UES Defiance. His ship was one of the 3 approaching the alien fleet, but he wasn't laughing. His face showed no emotion as he watched the massive enemy armada on his own screens. "Captain, they're not taking us seriously," reported his communications officer, Park. "Their radio chatter is full of jokes about our fleet size." Kim nodded slowly. "Let them laugh. It makes our job easier." His crew moved around the bridge with calm efficiency. No one seemed worried about facing impossible odds. The weapons officer, Lee, was running final checks on systems that the aliens couldn't even detect. The navigation officer, Cho, was calculating attack patterns that would confuse enemy sensors. "Sir, all ships report ready," said his first officer, Jung. "Captain Han on the Retribution and Captain Song on the Vindication are standing by for your orders." Kim walked to the front window of his bridge and looked out at the alien fleet. They were massive ships built to intimidate and overwhelm enemies through sheer size. The Zephyrian Empire had used the same tactics for centuries. Show up with overwhelming force, demand surrender, then take whatever they wanted. "Do they know about our real capabilities?" asked Park. "No," Kim replied. "Earth intelligence made sure of that. As far as they know, we're still using chemical rockets and metal bullets." The truth was much different. Humanity had been developing in secret for decades, advancing far beyond what other species realized. While aliens thought humans were primitive, Earth scientists had been making breakthrough discoveries in physics, engineering, and warfare technology. Kethavar's fleet slowly moved closer, taking their time. The admiral wanted to savor this easy victory. He planned to destroy the human ships quickly, then broadcast the battle recording across the galaxy as a warning to other species. "Open a communication channel," Kethavar ordered. "Let's give these humans one chance to run away before we crush them." The message went out across all frequencies, translated into human language by their computers. "Attention, human vessels. You are facing the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply. Captain." Kim received the message and smiled for the first time that day. "Reply with standard response protocol," he told Park. "Should I tell them about our defensive capabilities, sir?" Park asked. "No need," Kim said. "They'll figure it out soon enough." The Zephyrian fleet continued approaching, confident in their overwhelming advantage. None of them suspected that this day would change everything they thought they knew about humanity and their place in the galaxy. The communication channel crackled to life as Admiral Kethvar's voice boomed across space. His tone carried the authority of someone who had never been refused. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are outgunned and outnumbered 200 to 3. Surrender immediately and abandon the colony, or we will destroy you where you float. You have exactly 1 hour to comply." On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Kim listened to the ultimatum without changing expression. His crew waited silently for orders, their hands steady on their controls. The massive alien fleet filled their view screens, an intimidating wall of metal and weapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. "Sir, what's our response?" asked Communications Officer Park, his finger hovering over the transmit button. Kim stepped forward and spoke clearly into the microphone. "Negative, we hold our ground." The response was so simple and direct that it took the Zephyrians a moment to process it. On Kethavar's bridge, officers looked at each other in confusion. "Did they just refuse us?" asked the tactical officer, checking his translation software. "Maybe their computers made an error." Kethavar's eyes narrowed. In 30 years of conquest, only 3 species had ever refused his initial surrender demand. All 3 had been completely destroyed within hours. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. "Perhaps they didn't understand the situation," suggested his science officer. "Their primitive sensors might not be reading our fleet size correctly." "Send them our tactical display," Kethvar ordered. "Show them exactly what they're facing." The Zephyrians transmitted a detailed breakdown of their fleet composition. 200 ships, including 50 heavy cruisers, 20 battleships and 5 massive dreadnoughts. Each ship's weapon capacity and shield strength was listed in clear numbers that any spacefaring species could understand. Captain Kim reviewed the data and handed it to his tactical officer, Lee. "What do you think of their setup?" Lee studied the information for a moment. "Standard intimidation formation, sir. They're designed to look impressive and overwhelm enemies psychologically. Their actual combat effectiveness is probably much lower than these numbers suggest." "Should we respond with our own fleet data?" asked Park. "No point," Kim replied. "They wouldn't believe it anyway." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Kethvar was growing impatient. The humans had received his fleet data 10 minutes ago, but hadn't responded with either surrender or their own military information. "Maybe they're discussing terms among themselves," suggested his first officer. "Some species need time to accept defeat. Or maybe," Kethvar said slowly, "they need a demonstration of our power." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target the lead human ship. Fire 1 plasma cannon burst, just enough to damage their shields and show them we're serious." "Yes, sir. Charging plasma cannon number 1. The massive weapon on the front of the Zephyrian flagship began glowing bright blue as energy built up inside its focusing chamber. This single cannon was powerful enough to crack the hull of most enemy ships. Against a small human vessel, it should cause significant damage. Firing in 3, 2, 1, plasma cannon away. A brilliant blue beam lanced across space toward the UES Defiance. The Zephyrian bridge crew watched their screens, expecting to see the human ship's shields fail and its hull begin melting under the intense heat. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma beam hit the human ship and simply disappeared. No explosion, no shield flare, no visible damage at all. The deadly energy seemed to vanish the moment it touched the hull. "What just happened?" Kethvar demanded, staring at his tactical display. "I don't know, sir," replied his weapons officer, frantically checking his systems. "The plasma cannon fired correctly. Energy output was normal, but there's no impact signature." "Run a diagnostic on the targeting computer," ordered the tactical officer. "Sir, diagnostics show all systems functioning perfectly," came the reply. The shot was accurate. It hit the target. On the human ship, Captain Kim watched the alien weapons strike harmlessly against their adaptive shielding. The advanced defensive system analyzed the incoming energy and instantly configured itself to absorb and redirect the attack. "They're probably confused right now," observed Lee, monitoring the alien communications chatter. "Should we explain our shield technology?" asked Jung. "Not yet," Kim said. "Let them try a few more shots first. We need to gather data on their weapon systems." Kethvar was now standing directly in front of his main screen, his scaled hands clenched into fists. Fire again. Full power this time. Sir, that might be overkill for a ship that small. Do it. The plasma cannon charged again, this time drawing power from the ship's main reactor. The energy beam that emerged was 3 times brighter and carried enough force to punch through a moon. Again it struck the human ship and vanished without effect. Panic began spreading through the Zephyrian fleet as word of the failed attacks reached other ships. Captains who had been joking about easy victory were now demanding explanations from their science officers. "Sir," called out the Zephyrian sensor operator, his voice shaking, "I'm reading some very strange energy signatures from the human ships." Kethvar spun around. "What kind of signatures?" "I don't know, sir. Our computers can't identify the power source. It's like nothing in our databases." For the first time in decades, Admiral Kethvar felt a cold chill of uncertainty creep up his spine. Captain Kim's voice cut through the silence on his bridge, cold and precise. "You fired first. Rules of engagement are now active. All ships, engage targets." The transformation was instant and terrifying. The 3 human ships, which had been drifting slowly like harmless cargo vessels, suddenly exploded into motion. They accelerated so fast that the Zephyrian sensors couldn't track them properly. What looked like impossible speed was actually humanity's mastery of inertial dampening technology, allowing their crews to survive maneuvers that would turn any other species into liquid. On the UES Defiance, Captain Kim calmly gave orders as his ship spun and twisted through space like a dancer. "Weapons Officer Lee, you are authorized to engage. Show them what we've been working on." The hull of Kim's ship began changing. Panels that looked like normal metal plating slid apart, revealing weapon systems that had been completely hidden. These weren't the primitive missile launchers or laser cannons that aliens expected from humans. These were something else entirely. "Antimatter cannons online," Lee reported, his hands moving across controls that would have been incomprehensible to any Zephyrian scientist. "Target locked on the nearest destroyer. Fire when ready." A beam of pure white energy lanced out from the UES Defiance. It wasn't like the clumsy plasma weapons the Zephyrians used. This was concentrated antimatter, contained and directed by magnetic fields so precise they could thread a needle at 1,000 miles. The beam struck the Zephyrian destroyer's shields and passed right through them as if they didn't exist. The alien ship's armor, designed to withstand conventional weapons, offered no more protection than tissue paper. The antimatter touched the hull and began converting matter directly into energy. "What's happening to our ship?" screamed the destroyer's captain over the radio as his vessel literally began disappearing, atom by atom. Meanwhile, Captain Han aboard the UES Retribution was demonstrating an even more advanced technology. His ship wasn't just moving fast, it was drawing unlimited power from empty space itself. Human scientists had learned to tap into quantum vacuum energy, pulling electricity from the very fabric of reality. "Power levels at 400% and climbing," reported his engineer Choi. "Quantum tap is stable." "Good," Han replied, watching his targeting computer lock onto 3 Zephyrian cruisers at once. "Let's show them what unlimited energy can do." The Retribution's weapons fired continuously, each shot more powerful than the last. The beams didn't just destroy enemy ships, they seemed to erase them from existence. Hulls didn't explode or melt. They simply ceased to be there. On the 3rd human ship, the UES Vindication, Captain Song was preparing humanity's most terrifying weapon. His ship looked smaller than the others, but appearances were deceiving. Hidden inside its hull was technology that could manipulate space and time itself. "Gravity wave generator online," announced his science officer Min. "We can create localized distortions on your command." "Target the enemy formation center," Song ordered. "Let's see how they handle weaponized physics." Space itself began bending around the Vindication. What the humans had discovered was how to create artificial gravity wells, essentially making tiny black holes that could be controlled and directed. The effect on the Zephyrian fleet was immediate and catastrophic. 3 enemy cruisers suddenly found themselves being pulled toward each other by impossible gravitational forces. Their engines, designed for normal space travel, were useless against the distorted space-time around them. The ships crumpled together like tin cans, their hulls compressing under gravity that shouldn't exist. But the humans weren't monsters. Even as the ships were being crushed, Captain Song's crew used emergency transporters to beam the alien crews to safety, depositing them on nearby vessels before their ships were completely destroyed. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as his mighty fleet began falling apart. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being destroyed by weapons he couldn't even understand. His tactical displays showed impossible readings, energy signatures that violated every law of physics he knew, weapons that seemed to run on unlimited power. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than our computers can count them," reported his panicked tactical officer. "The humans are using technology that our sensors can't even properly detect." "How is this possible?" Kethvar demanded. "Our intelligence said they were primitive, chemical rockets and metal projectiles." "Sir, our intelligence was wrong, very wrong." On his screen, Kethvar watched one of his battleships simply vanish as a human antimatter beam touched it. No explosion, no debris field, just empty space where 1,000 crew vessel had been seconds before. The 3 human ships moved through his fleet like wolves among sheep. They were impossibly fast, impossibly powerful, and seemed to have an unlimited supply of energy. Every shot they fired destroyed or disabled a Zephyrian vessel. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human flagship," called the communications officer. "Put it through," Kethvar said, his voice barely a whisper. Captain Kim's face appeared on the screen, still calm and emotionless. "Admiral, you have 30 seconds to order your remaining ships to retreat. Continue this engagement, and we will be forced to demonstrate weapons that make these look primitive." Kethvar stared at the human captain, finally understanding that everything his empire believed about this species was completely wrong. Captain Park aboard the UES Vindication watched the massive Zephyrian command ship on his screen. The alien flagship was 10 times larger than his vessel, bristling with weapons and surrounded by protective escort ships. Any normal attack would be suicide, but Park wasn't planning a normal attack. "Engineering status on the phase drive?" he asked calmly. "Phase drive ready, Captain," replied his chief engineer Yoon. "Molecular cohesion field is stable. We can maintain ghost state for approximately 47 seconds. "More than enough time," Park said. "Helm set course directly through their flagship. Maximum acceleration." The helmsman, Yang, looked back with concern. "Sir, that's a collision course." "Exactly." The Vindication suddenly shot forward like a bullet, accelerating to speeds that should have been impossible for any ship with a living crew. The Zephyrian sensors detected the approach, and every weapon on the command ship turned toward the incoming human vessel. "Destroy that ship!" Admiral Kethvar screamed, watching the human vessel race toward him. "All batteries, fire everything!" Hundreds of plasma cannons, particle beams, and missile launchers erupted at once. The space between the ships filled with deadly energy, as the entire Zephyrian fleet focused their firepower on the single approaching target. But something impossible happened. The human ship didn't dodge, didn't slow down, didn't even try to avoid the incoming fire. Instead, every weapon passed harmlessly through it as if it wasn't there. Plasma beams, solid projectiles, and energy blasts all traveled through the Vindication like it was made of air. "What's happening?" Kethvar demanded, his voice rising. "In panic. Sir, our weapons are registering direct hits, but the target isn't taking any damage," reported his weapons officer. "It's like we're shooting at a ghost." That's exactly what they were shooting at. The phase drive was humanity's most closely guarded secret. By manipulating the quantum state of matter, the ship could exist in 2 realities at once. It was still moving, but temporarily shifted out of normal space-time. Weapons in normal space couldn't touch something that existed partially in another dimension. Captain Park watched calmly as his ship approached the alien flagship. 15 seconds to contact. Prepare nanite deployment. In the engineering section, teams of technicians activated containers filled with microscopic robots. These nanites were designed for one purpose: to infiltrate and disable enemy computer systems from the inside. 5 seconds to penetration, announced Zhang. "Here we go," Park said quietly. The Vindication struck the Zephyrian flagship and passed completely through it, like a knife through water. For just a moment, both ships occupied the same space, existing in overlapping dimensions. In that brief instant, billions of nanites transferred from the human ship into the alien vessel's computer core. As the Vindication emerged from the other side and returned to normal space, Admiral Kethvar felt his ship shudder around him. "Damage report," he shouted. "Sir, no hull damage detected," came the confused reply. "But we're getting strange readings from our computer systems." Then the lights went out. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the bridge as warning alarms began blaring. Every screen on the command deck started showing error messages in languages that didn't exist. "Sir, we're losing control of ship functions," reported the engineering officer, panic creeping into his voice. "Life support, navigation, weapons, communications, everything is failing." The nanites were doing their job perfectly. They had infiltrated every computer system on the ship and were systematically shutting down critical functions. But they weren't trying to kill anyone. The life support systems were being switched to backup power, ensuring the crew would survive even as their ship became helpless. Meanwhile, Captain Song on the UES Retribution was demonstrating humanity's mastery over the fundamental forces of the universe. His ship had moved to the center of the Zephyrian formation, where the largest concentration of enemy vessels was trying to regroup. "Gravity well generator at full power," reported his science officer Kim, "ready to create localized spatial distortions." "Target the 3 heavy cruisers in Formation Delta," Song ordered. "Create a controlled singularity between them." What happened next defied everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about physics. Space itself began warping around the 3 alien cruisers. Invisible forces pulled at their hulls as gravity increased exponentially in the area between them. The ships, each weighing millions of tons, started drifting toward each other as if pulled by an irresistible magnet. "What's happening to our navigation?" called one of the cruiser captains over the radio. "Our engines are at full reverse, but we're still moving forward." The human ship was creating an artificial black hole, a gravitational anomaly so powerful that nothing could escape it. But unlike a natural black hole, this one was carefully controlled. The human crew could adjust its size, power, and duration with precision. As the 3 Zephyrian ships drew closer together, their hulls began groaning under the stress. Metal twisted and bent as gravitational forces pulled them into impossible shapes. But even as their ships were being destroyed, the alien crews were being saved. Advanced transporter technology beamed every Zephyrian sailor to safety aboard nearby vessels before their ships were completely crushed. The 3 cruisers collapsed into a single point of light before vanishing completely, leaving only empty space where they had been. Across the fleet, Zephyrian captains stared at their instruments in shock and terror. They were facing an enemy that could walk through solid matter, control gravity itself, and deploy weapons that operated on principles beyond their understanding. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a demonstration of how far humanity had advanced, beyond every other species in the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar sat alone on his dying flagship, watching through the broken windows as his once mighty fleet scattered in every direction. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were now fleeing, like frightened animals. Half his armada was gone, destroyed or disabled by just 3 human vessels. The bridge around him was dark and silent. His crew had evacuated to escape pods after the nanites shut down life support. Only he remained, too proud to abandon his command even as it drifted helplessly through space. His personal communicator crackled to life. Captain Kim's calm voice filled the empty bridge. "Admiral Kethvar, this is Captain Kim of the UES Defiance. Can you hear me?" Kethvar picked up the device with shaking hands. "I can hear you, human." "Good. I wanted to speak with you before you're rescued. Your empire has been conquering species for over 3 centuries. Tell me, did you ever wonder why humanity was never on your target lists?" The question hit Kethvar like a physical blow. In all his years of military service, he had studied thousands of potential targets, worlds to conquer, species to subjugate, resources to claim. But now that Kim mentioned it, Earth had never appeared on any conquest plan he'd ever seen. I assumed you were too primitive to bother with," Kethvar admitted. Kim's laugh was cold and humorless. "That's what we wanted you to think." "What?" "We wanted everyone to think." "What do you mean?" "Check your long-range sensors, Admiral. Look toward your home systems." Kethvar stumbled to the emergency sensor station, one of the few systems still functioning on his ship. What he saw on the screen made his blood freeze. Across the entire Zephyrian Empire, human fleets were appearing. Not small squadrons like the one that had destroyed his armada, but massive formations of hundreds of ships. They materialized simultaneously at every major military base, every conquered world, every strategic installation his empire controlled. "This is impossible," Kethvar whispered. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough," Kim replied simply. "Admiral, those 3 ships you just fought weren't a desperate last stand. They were a test, humanity's final offer of peace before we revealed ourselves to the galaxy." The truth was becoming clear, and it terrified Kethvar more than any weapon. "You've been watching us." "We've been watching everyone. For centuries, humanity has observed every major galactic power. We've seen your conquests, your wars, your treatment of weaker species. We've been waiting to see if any of you could learn to coexist peacefully." On planets across Zephyrian space, the same scene was playing out. Human ships arrived not with weapons blazing, but broadcasting the same message in every local language. "Attention, citizens of the Zephyrian Empire. Effective immediately. All military operations will cease. Any species enslaved or conquered by your empire is now under human protection. Prepare for new management." The Zephyrian military commanders tried to fight back, but it was hopeless. Their weapons couldn't even scratch human shields. Their fastest ships moved like slugs compared to human vessels. Within hours, every major military installation in the Empire had surrendered without firing a shot. But the humans weren't interested in conquest. They immediately began freeing enslaved populations, returning conquered worlds to their original inhabitants, and dismantling the Empire's military infrastructure. Species that had been oppressed for generations suddenly found themselves free. "Why?" Kethvar asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why didn't you stop us sooner? My empire enslaved billions of beings over the centuries. Because we needed to see if you could change on your own," Kim explained. "Humanity learned long ago that forced peace doesn't last. Real change has to come from within. We gave every galactic power the chance to evolve beyond conquest and domination. And if we had, then you would have eventually been invited to join the Galactic Federation, the real one, not the puppet organization you thought ruled the galaxy." Kethvar's mind reeled. "There's another federation. Over 200 species working together peacefully. All the races that learned to coexist instead of conquer. We've been building a better galaxy while empires like yours fought over scraps." The Admiral looked out at the wreckage of his fleet, understanding finally dawning. "We were never the apex predators, were we?" "No, Admiral. You were being managed. Every empire that chose conquest over cooperation eventually faced the same choice you're facing now. Change or be changed." Rescue ships were approaching his flagship now, both human and vessels from species the Zephyrian Empire had once enslaved. They came not as conquerors, but as liberators, offering a chance at redemption. "What happens to me now?" Kethvar asked. "That depends on you," Kim replied. "You can spend the rest of your life in prison for your war crimes, or you can help us rebuild what your empire destroyed. The choice is yours." As the rescue ships arrived, Kethvar realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. Humanity hadn't been hiding from galactic civilization. They had been protecting it, quietly watching and guiding species toward a better future. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of cooperation was about to begin, and humanity, the species everyone had underestimated, would be leading the way.